A kitchen table, Wednesday night. The house is quiet because the kids went to bed an hour ago. There is a laptop open to a bank statement. There is a grocery receipt folded next to it. The total on the receipt is higher than last week. The total on the receipt has been higher than last week for what feels like 3 straight years. The news says inflation is coming down. The Federal Reserve says it is watching closely. The official number, the Consumer Price Index, says prices rose 2.7% in 2025. 2.7, that is supposed to be close to normal. That is supposed to mean things are getting better. The kitchen does not feel like 2.7. The ground beef is up. The orange juice went somewhere nobody expected. The eggs did whatever eggs do now. And the gas just jumped 21.2% in a single month. March 2026, because of a conflict 7,000 miles away. But the number on the television says 2.7. This is not a story about a government lying. That would be simpler. This is a story about a government measuring something real. Measuring it carefully. Measuring it with a methodology that took decades to build, and still ending up with a number. That does not match the feeling in your kitchen. The distance between those two things is not corruption, it is design. And tonight, I want to walk through that design with you, one layer at a time, because I think understanding it changes the way you hear every inflation headline for the rest of your life. The receipt on the table, the number on the screen, they are both telling the truth. They are just answering different questions. The first layer is the one most people never hear about. It has a name that sounds like it belongs in an academic paper. Because it does, hedonic quality adjustment. Here is what it means. When the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks the price of a smartphone, it does not simply record what you paid at the register. It records what you paid, and then it adjusts that price based on what you got. If the new phone has a faster processor, a better camera, more storage, the BLS assigns a dollar value to those improvements and subtracts it from the price. The logic is straightforward. If you are getting more for your money, the price has not really gone up, even if the number on your credit card statement did. The math is real. The regression models are published. They track processor speed in gigahertz, camera megapixels, screen resolution, RAM. Since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began quality adjusting smartphone prices in January 2018, none of the hedonic regression models they used had an adjusted R-squared below 0.82. These are not guesses. These are statistically significant estimates of what each feature is worth, and the result is dramatic. In the first 2 years after the BLS adopted hedonic adjustments for telephone hardware, according to BLS data, the official CPI for that category fell 24.13%, while a counterfactual index without quality adjustments fell only 14.85%. That is a 9-point gap created entirely by the quality adjustment. In 2022, the Bureau of Labor Statistics recorded a 22% deflation in smartphone prices. While almost everything else was getting more expensive, your phone bill did not go down 22%. Your phone did not cost 22% less. But the index said it did because the camera got better. I should mention, this is public information, not personal guidance. Your life has details I will never know, but the numbers are worth hearing. And here is where it starts to matter beyond phones. The same principle that improvements in quality offset increases in price runs through the entire index. It touches appliances, it touches cars, it touches the way the government calculates how much more expensive your life actually got. Every time it runs, it pulls the official number down a little. Not because someone is cheating, because someone decided decades ago that a better product at the same price is the same as a cheaper product, and on paper, that makes sense. In your wallet, it does not change anything. The light in the kitchen is still on. The receipt is still on the table. The second layer goes deeper. It is called the substitution effect. And this one is harder to sit with. The CPI is built on a basket of goods, the things a typical American household buys. But that basket is not fixed the way most people think it is. When the price of one item goes up significantly, the BLS assumes consumers will shift their purchasing to a cheaper alternative. Beef gets expensive, so you buy chicken. Name brand gets expensive, so you buy store brand. This assumption is baked into the index formula. The current CPI uses a geometric mean formula. At the lowest level, a change recommended after the 1996 Boskin Commission found the CPI overstated inflation by approximately 1.1 percentage points per year. The Commission, in a report submitted to the Senate Finance Committee, identified 4 sources of bias: substitution bias, new product bias, quality change bias, and outlet substitution bias. The fix was reasonable, the math was defensible. But the consequence is this. When the index says inflation is 2.7%, part of that number assumes you already downgraded. It assumes you already switched from the thing you wanted to the thing you could afford. The index does not measure what it costs to maintain your standard of living. It measures what it costs to maintain a standard of living. That keeps adjusting downward as prices rise. That is not a conspiracy, that is a formula. And the formula was designed to be more accurate. But accurate for whom is a question worth asking. This is the part that kept me up. Not because it is complicated, because it is simple. There is a version of the CPI called the chained CPI, which accounts for substitution more aggressively. According to the Congressional Budget Office and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, this version has historically run about 0.25 to 0.3 percentage points lower per year than the traditional CPI. Over 10 years, that gap compounds. Over 20 years, it reshapes what Social Security pays, what tax brackets look like, what the government owes you. A quarter of a point sounds like nothing. It is not nothing. It is the distance between what you were promised and what you received, measured in decades. Nobody talks about this at the grocery store. Nobody posts about the geometric mean formula. Everyone just adjusts, buys the smaller package, switches to the store brand, calls it budgeting. The third layer is the biggest one. It is the one that carries the most weight in the CPI. Literally, it is called owner's equivalent rent. If you own your home, the CPI does not track your mortgage payment. It does not track your property taxes. It does not track your insurance premium, which, in many states, has been climbing faster than almost anything else. Instead, it asks a question. If you were to rent your own home to yourself, how much would that rent be? That hypothetical rent is called owner's equivalent rent, and it accounts for approximately 26.5% of the entire CPI as of December 2025, according to BLS relative importance tables. Shelter overall makes up roughly 35.7% of the index. More than a third of the inflation number you see on the news is driven by a price that nobody actually pays. This matters because the gap between what the OER says and what homeowners actually experience has been widening. According to the Census Bureau, the median monthly mortgage payment for people who moved in 2024 was $2,225, compared to the overall median of $1,521 for all homeowners with a mortgage. Meanwhile, Shelter's CPI came in at 3% year-over-year. In March 2026, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 3% sounds manageable. $2,200 a month on a mortgage. That did not exist 5 years ago. Does not feel like 3%. A 45-year-old sitting at that kitchen table, managing a family budget on a single income in Indianapolis. Every month, the numbers come in. Every month, the gap between what the government says and what the checking account says gets a little wider, not because anyone is lying, because the map was drawn for a different terrain. That is the center of this. The CPI is a map, a very detailed, very carefully constructed map, but it is a map of average consumer behavior across 330 million people, weighted by expenditure categories that get updated on a lag, adjusted for quality improvements you may not have asked for, and built on a housing metric that has never once been a number on anyone's actual bill. Your life is not an average. Your grocery list is not a basket of goods. Your house is not a rental to yourself. The person at that table, they did not do anything wrong. They followed the budget. They tracked the spending. They read the headlines that said inflation was cooling. And every month, the numbers told a different story than the headlines. That is not just money. That is years of adjusting. Years of wondering whether the problem is the economy, or the arithmetic, or something in between. The cost is not just dollars. It is the quiet erosion of trust in a number that is supposed to tell you how your country is doing. Here is what the system does not tell you. There is a version of the CPI that tries to measure what older Americans actually experience. It is called the R-CPI-E, a research index published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics for Americans 62 and older. It has historically risen faster than the standard CPI-W, used for Social Security cost of living adjustments. It exists, it is published, it is not used for any official adjustment. The gap between the index that measures your reality and the index that determines your benefit is a policy choice, not a technical limitation, a choice. Nobody at the Bureau of Labor Statistics lost their job. When the gap widened, that is worth sitting with for a second. The smartphone got better, the index went down. The chicken replaced the beef, the index stayed flat. The rent you do not pay measured the house you already own. The index said shelter costs rose 3%, and you sat at the kitchen table, looking at a receipt that told a different story, and wondered whether you were the one getting the math wrong. You were not. The map is accurate. The map is precise. The map is peer-reviewed and published, and defended by people who are very good at what they do. The terrain just changed faster than the map, and nobody updates the legend. So the question that stays on that table, next to the receipt, next to the laptop, next to the quiet, is not whether the government is measuring inflation correctly. By its own definition, it probably is. The question is whether the thing being measured is the thing you actually need to know, and if it is not, if the number on the screen and the number in your life have been answering different questions this whole time, then who decides which question matters? And has anyone ever asked you?